Now, tell me about the growers here. How is this law going to open up this? I mean, right now, I guess most of your pot, according to the number of busts that I see, with the Border Patrol making, the number of illegals that are coming up here carrying marijuana, how is this going to affect the trafficking? Now, I've heard that Canada is really upset with California because they say they're going to lose $20 billion in black market income if California legalizes marijuana. And I'm sure Mexico feels the same way. How is this going to affect, are people just going to be able to start growing in their backyard? Or how is this going to affect? Can you give me some...
Yeah. Well, all marijuana that is distributed through the dispensary system must be grown by the dispensaries. So immediately you're providing patients with an alternative. Right now, the patients who are using marijuana with the doctor's recommendation face a really terrible choice. They either have to continue to suffer with their severe and debilitating medical condition, or they have to go to the criminal market, or they have to get a product that they don't know where it came from. They don't know what sort of molds or pesticides or other drugs that what they're buying may be laced with. And unfortunately, in a state like Arizona that's so close to the border, on the border, most of the marijuana supply to the criminal market comes from Mexican drug cartels. So, as it stands right now, patients are unwittingly lining the pockets of some of the world's worst criminals. And this provides them with a safe and legal route to get unknown medication from a safe and legal source, and allows them to have confidence in knowing that they're not financing violent criminals when they're just trying to get their medication the doctor recommends.
Who can grow marijuana? I mean, are they going to look at your past record if you've ever been busted for marijuana before, or are you going to be kept from having a business in marijuana?
Folks who have been arrested for a drug charge that would still be a crime under the medical marijuana law. So if you were arrested for felony trafficking, for instance, some years prior, that would preclude you from being involved in the industry of the dispensary owner. However, if you were a legitimate medical patient and you were arrested for minor possession, for instance, and had this law been in place, you never would have been arrested. That is not considered an excluded felony. So those types of individuals will still be able to be involved. So if you have a felony conviction, it's a case-by-case basis. And we want to make sure that we're allowing people who really did nothing wrong, and they had this law been in place, they would not have gotten in trouble. Those individuals won't be punished moving forward. However, if there is some sort of more serious drug charge, that would still be a crime even under this law. Those people would be excluded.
Okay, what have you learned from the dispensaries running in California? What kind of business models are they producing? What kind of income are they doing? What kind of information have you been able to ascertain about them?
Well, the California dispensaries are obviously doing very, very well. Unfortunately, they're doing well in the wrong way in many cases. There are some very good operations in California. Unfortunately, those tend to be in the minority. And that's due to the fact that there's still no statewide regulation of marijuana dispensaries in California. When California passed their law in 1996, they passed a one-page piece of legislation that did absolutely nothing to regulate the industry. And 14 years later, there's still no statewide regulation. And that's led to a really interesting situation where there's a patchwork of different approaches to the issue from city and county governments all across the state. So the way that dispensaries are treated in city and county in San Francisco and the Bay Area is significantly different than the county of Los Angeles. And the LA County is a good example of why an unregulated marijuana market has some unintended consequences. And up until very recently, when the city council finally decided to get ahead of after the fact, trying to catch up with the issue, there were more than 1,000 dispensaries operating in Los Angeles County, and that's an incredibly high number. Our legislation, for the state of Arizona has a far greater population than the county of Los Angeles does, and we're limiting the total number of facilities in our entire state to 124, and we think that that'll very adequately serve patient needs. So we had a situation in California where, due to lack of regulation, these types of facilities really have legitimately become a blight on some of these communities just because they haven't been regulated appropriately.
What are they doing? What are they doing wrong? I mean, if they're growing, they've got a license, or they're licensed to do this. What are they doing wrong?
Well, have you been to Venice Beach lately?
Matter of fact, I just came from there, but I didn't go into any dispensaries.
Well, right, but I mean, I think that if you're on Venice Beach, it's impossible not to notice them. They do not have a very, what I would call, patient-focused approach. They're not really trying to provide medicine. I mean, the reality of the California system is that it's really just legalized marijuana. California has no qualifying conditions list. You can get marijuana for any condition in California, as long as you have a physician that will certify that you can benefit from marijuana in some way. You can get medical marijuana, and to take advantage of that situation, they have sign spinners and other types of trapping going on the boardwalk. And what I want people to know is that you can see what the difficulties with this type of program can be if you don't regulate it, and you see what is going on in California. And I think that creates a lot of fear in voters here that we're going to have a very similar system to what happened in California. And I can tell people that nothing could be far from the truth. We have the most tightly regulated and well thought out medical marijuana proposal ever put forward. And we have learned from other states' mistakes, and we've addressed those concerns within our legislation.
How does yours compare to, say, Colorado?
Well, Colorado just changed very dramatically. They had a similar situation to California in that their law was passed in 2000. They didn't have any regulation of their dispensary industry either. In fact, their law doesn't actually allow dispensaries. The 2000 law didn't. It's just that the definition of what a caregiver is, it was so loosely defined in their law. To be a caregiver in Colorado, you could have an unlimited number of patients. You could have an unlimited number of plants for those patients, and you could dispense to them at a profit, and you didn't have to have any relationship as a caregiver with a patient beyond just providing them marijuana. So even though that's not called a dispensary, it's called a caregiver in Colorado, it basically is a dispensary. It's the same system. So as soon as the Obama administration said that they were no longer going to prosecute medical marijuana offenses, there was a proliferation of dispensaries in Colorado because there was the fear of prosecution was gone. So again, that was an unregulated industry, and they encountered some of the similar problems that California did, and that there was no limitation on the number of facilities. And Colorado is in a better position than California in the sense that their qualifying conditions list is more restrictive. That's still not as restrictive as ours is, but it's a step in the right direction if you're trying to have a legitimate medical marijuana program. And Colorado is getting ahead of, finally, getting ahead of their issue. They had additional statewide regulations that were just passed last year that I think will make a big difference for that industry. But they weren't done entirely the right way, either. And I think it's very important to have involvement from the industry itself in drafting these types of regulations because, the high quality operators want to see the same thing that the regulators do, and that's the clean industry where people are playing by the rules, and